Hello, I'm Moderator, and welcome to my third video in this series on the Alliance Tournament. In the first two videos, I talked about the tournament very generally, as well as why it's important in the game, as well as a video about the teams and the brackets that they are participating in. So for this third video, I'm going to be covering the flagships that have just recently been posted by CCP as of yesterday. Originally, I was going to talk about 3 crafting in meta, but since the topic of flagships is a good segue and bridge into the topic of theory crafting meta, I've decided to tackle this one first. So, what is a flagship? A flagship is a Tech 1 or a faction battleship that can do 2 things. First off, it avoids bans. So if you were to ban out, say, a Bhaalgorn, you can not bring a regular Bhaalgorn, but you can bring your flagship Bhaalgorn. So it can dodge a ban. You can fit these with essentially any high slot that you want, excluding remote repair modules. You can fit weapon upgrades, so you can get more damage out of them in the form of things like ballistics control units, as well as things like a gyro stabilizer or a heatsink. And you can also fit E-War modules and tackle modules in the mids that are of the officer, dead space, faction, whatever variety you want. You're not limited to the regular Tech 2 modules that are used in every other ship in the Alliance tournament. Flagships, however, are still restricted to the Tech 1 rig, so you can't go too crazy with them. So, unsurprisingly, of the 48 teams that fielded a flagship, for whatever reason, 16 of the 64 teams did not choose to field a flagship. I suspect that most of those teams that didn't submit one will not be making it past the preliminary rounds. 29 of them chose the Bhaalgorn. So, almost 2/3 of you chose the Bhaalgorn, and unsurprisingly, as a result, one of the reasons that the Bhaalgorn is going to be so popular in this year's meta is that all the Blood Raider ships, of which the Bhaalgorn is one, have a 2-point reduction. So, for example, the Kuror will only cost 2 points instead of 4, and the Ashimu costs 9 points instead of 11. The Bhaalgorn costs 17 points instead of 19. So for an example Bhaalgorn fit, I'm going to go to what Dan Cool of Pandemic Legion brought in the previous year's Alliance tournament. So right off the bat, you can see one of the great utilities of the Bhaalgorn is that it has a bonus to web of fire range. So with maximum officer tier webs and heat as well as links, you can web out to nearly 68 kilometers. 68 kilometers does a lot of things in that it prevents teams from really closing to range on you, so you can play keep away with the Bhaalgorn. Hicks can't really close to range on you to scram you, and even if they did, you can then use your massively bonus neutralizers and Nosferatus to shut them down. Maxed out Bhaalgorn has effectively nearly double the newt strength of regular newts, so you can see that the Bhaalgorn doesn't do a lot of damage. It's only pushing about 420 damage blaze it with Scorch. But on the whole, it's got a fairly good tank with resist and with the reactive armor hardener. And because it's a flagship, you can fit a dead space armor repair for additional local tank as well. So on the whole, it does a lot of things very well. And unsurprisingly, it's the choice that most of you have gone with. The next most popular choice, dropping all the way from 29 picks to 4 picks, was the Armageddon. So the Armageddon is a bit of a black sheep in this year's tournament because while it does have the bonus to neutralizer range, it doesn't have a neutralizer amount bonus. However, this 48 optimal is the equivalent of a Bhaalgorn's optimal and fall off. So with an Armageddon, you can actually play keep away on a Bhaalgorn. You can hit it at range if you can manage to kite it out with newts and never allow it to actually close to range on you to counter newt you. One of the problems that the Armageddon does suffer from, though, is that it doesn't have a lot of utility besides the newts. It doesn't have any bonuses really to anything else, and the bonus it does have to drone damage isn't particularly solid this year because you simply can't use any drones other than Tech 1s, and Tech 1 drones are very slow and they don't output a lot of damage and are relatively easy to kill. So you can see kind of a sharp drop-off going down from the number of picks from the Armageddon down to the Bhaalgorn. For reference, all of these fits that I'm using are either example fits or copy and pasted fits from previous Alliance tournaments. I don't think Tuskers would be too appreciative if I gave people fully fleshed out and optimized fits this close to the tournament. So going to the Scorpion Navy issue, which was a pick that was chosen by Pandemic Legion, Test, CVA, and Brave Collective. So some fairly well-known teams that have performed solidly in the past, particularly in Pandemic Legion. They've opted not to go with any sort of an armor battleship. They've opted to go with a shield battleship. This Scorpion Navy issue is a copy and paste from Zabos' Scorpion Navy issue that was fielded by Campbell Empire in Alliance Tournament 13 that infamously went down in one of the most expensive matches to ever occur in AT history against Pandemic Legion. So you can get upgraded cruise missile launchers, so you can push out nearly 1,000 damage. You have the Dead Space Heavy Neutralizer, you have the Dead Space Booster, and you have bonus target painters for added utility as well as ballistics control system. So you get a lot of utility out of this. You get the extra painters, you get a very solid tank, you get good resist across the board. I haven't even bothered to put links on here, but on the whole, Scorpion Navy issue is a very solid shield battleship, and I think it's very interesting that Pandemic Legion as well as Test have chosen to go with shield. Traditionally, a flagship indicates that there's some part of their meta that is going to be using that ship in the very end game, because this signifies that you want to be able to avoid or dodge a ban, and it's very interesting to see how teams are going to make use of these with a particularly finesse and utility-based lineup that the Scorpion Navy issue does tend to bring. So next up we have the Barghest. The Barghest can be either fit shield or armor, but for the sake of this video I've just given an example armor fit. So you get a faction smart bomb, faction newt. The Barghest has a bonus to missile range, so for the purposes of this video I've given it heavy missile launchers, and they do a pretty good job at killing cruisers and below, as well as having a bonus to the warp scrambler. So heated, you can hit out to just short of 27 kilometers with the scram, keep people away from you, and you also get the bonus target painter as well. So I'm not too sure what I think of this. I think that you probably have a better choice if you're wanting to go with it with an armor battleship. I think the Bhaalgorn or possibly the Typhoon Fleet issue are better choices, but it will remain to be seen how teams choose to field this in the tournament. Next up, we have the Scorpion. Now, one thing to note is that the Scorpion, it has a lot less utility going into this year that it had in previous years. The Scorpion is less powerful simply because sensor boosters, which I've included here in this fitting, now have an ECCM script. In the past, you used to have a separate ECCM module, and now that they've been merged into the sensor booster. So most battleships, and I think a good variety of other ships, will incorporate this. So instead of having to choose between two modules, you can just get the utility of additional targeting range, additional scan resolution, or additional ECCM protection against a ship like a Scorpion. Having said that, officer multispectrals are no joke, especially from a bonus ship that has recon links, and I think there can definitely still be quite a bit of utility out of this. With this kind of range, you can slam a logistics at nearly any range on the field. Eventually, you are going to jam it, and once you do catch those jams, you can start to work away at the smaller ships and then snowball off of that like you would in any sort of an ECM comp. So it doesn't do a lot of damage. In fact, it does next to no damage. You're essentially bringing a very expensive Falcon that tanks a lot more. Next up on the list, we would have the Typhoon Fleet issue. For this fit, I'm going to use DHB Wildcat's fit that he lost to high-sec Wardeckers, slightly modified. So this is a fit that is doing over 1,000 damage, again with heavy missiles. Typhoon Fleet issue has a very good slot layout. It's got a total of 5 mids and 8 lows, 8 highs, so you can get a lot of utility. You have 2 utility highs to work with in the form of either heavy energy neutralizers or smart bombs. You have a very good tank. Going with reactive armor hardeners, you get a bonus to being able to have the dead space rep, and you can project damage fairly far into almost all of the arena at 100 kilometers, so does a lot of damage at range. Still suffers from the rapid heavy missile reload time, but I think it could be a valid choice, and I'm being interested to see how both Lumpy and Waffles use it going forward in the tournament. Next up we have the Vindicator, and the Vindicator to me is a bit of a strange choice. So in a tournament where you are going to be fighting against Bhaalgorns and other sort of neuting ships predominantly, it strikes me as a bit weird to bring a Vindicator. A Vindicator needs to be on top of things to actually apply damage, and in all likelihood you're going to get webbed down. Since you're a battleship, you're slow, so you'll be probably Hexgrammed at some point, and you have nothing really in the way of utility. A Vindicator has no utility highs. It has to use all of them for guns. You get 2 bonus to webifiers that have a bonus to strength and not range, but still, they're not particularly solid ships. You only get really 3 modules. I don't think it's very worth it. I think Vindicators this year are just a weak choice, and I'm not a fan of bringing them in general. Last, and I have to say, or second to last rather, and I have to say probably least, is going to be the Machariel. The Machariel is a ship that is good in tranquility when you have slaves like Snuffbox used to use in low-sec Voltron, and you have a super tank and can get caught by triage reps. They're very powerful there. When you have them in nullsec and you're roaming, and you have things like snakes and they're essentially just a fast cruiser, I like them. However, for the purposes of the tournament, you can't shield tank them since they have only 5 mids. They have 7 lows, so it's hard to armor tank them and get any sort of damage out of them. Because it's an autocannon ship, you have to close to range, similarly to a blaster ship, and it doesn't put out that much damage. You only really get a bonus single utility high slot, and you get some combination of a faction scram and a web, maybe. I don't think it's a very solid choice on the whole. And for real this time, the last ship is going to be the Rattlesnake, chosen by White Legion. It's actually not the Rattlesnake. They've actually chosen to bring a Rattlesnake Victory Edition. It's a bit of a poke at fun at CCP, since the Alliance Tournament 12 skins were not actually converted as of yet to the skin system itself, so we just have actual Rattlesnake Victory Edition hulls floating around in space. So this Rattlesnake has some things going for it. It's got a fairly strong local tank with the bonus to shield resist, so you can go with the dead space repair. You can do a fair bit in the way of target painters. You can get heavy newt. You could get even faction or officer damage modules, which I didn't actually include here, but it would make the Rattlesnake a very powerful ship. Having said that, one of the issues with it is that the Rattlesnake only is able to use Tech 1 drones, so you lose a lot of damage that way. The Rattlesnake actually, I think, is a fairly okay choice. It's infamously rather slow, but I think it could be a valid choice for any sort of a shield setup going forward in this year's tournament. So that wraps it up for this video. For the next video, I'm actually going to get to the theory crafting and meta aspect of the tournament, unless something else comes up. Thank you for following this series, and catch you all next time.